My name is Brian Butcher. I'm the principal at Kennedy Elementary School, and thank you guys for coming tonight. This is my 15th year in Barrow County, and this is the second time we've kind of done the rezoning since I've been here. So it's an exciting time because it it allows us to means we're growing and we're getting better and getting bigger, which is always a good thing, but it also causes a lot of stress. No one loves change. No one likes change except for babies, and this is what we're going to be doing. There's going to be some change. So I do know that the county has done a great job of putting out lots of information for you guys, and that's what we're here for tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to them, but thank you guys for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to Ken Green.
Thank you. I'm really glad to see you. We're going to stand here and talk into the mic. We probably don't need it for the ones in the room, but we are live streaming on YouTube, and the recording will be available. And so we want to be respectful of those who've joined us online. Thank you for doing that. And so we're going to talk into the mic. So some of us who tend to move around, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us, but we're going to try to remember and be respectful. So we've got a lot planned for tonight. We're going to be here together for about an hour. We have a lot of information that we want to share. So Matt, if you'll click the button. Uh-oh, he's going to have to move. Here we go. So here's the roadmap for where we're going. First, we'll do a welcome and some introductions. There's some people up front that you may not see on a regular basis, and so I want to introduce them to you so that you will know who is here. After that, we have a presentation to go over with you about why we need to have a new elementary school and the options that are being considered for how we populate that with students. Then we'll get into some questions and answering some questions. And then we'll wrap up right at an hour. I'll go ahead and mention to you that a lot of the questions we'll answer were submitted to us when the surveys first went out, which was before the fall break, and people had an opportunity to submit questions that way. We've had a frequently asked questions page on our website for a while, and I'll show you that page again tonight. And there's an opportunity to submit questions through that means. But also, if you'll notice, taped around on backs of chairs and on cabinets and on cafeteria tables, you'll see, I'm told that color is goldenrod. So you will see some goldenrod little pages, and there's a QR code on it or a URL for a web page on that. You can scan the QR code with your smart device and go to a form that will allow you to submit questions. Or you can type in the URL in a web browser and submit questions. Megan McNally over here and I and my tablet are monitoring those as they come in, so they'll get right to us. One of the reasons that we want to have questions submitted electronically is so we can continue to add to our frequently asked questions. And folks who may not be present in this location or watching live stream tonight will still have access to those questions and those answers as they get posted. So that's the reason we'd like to do that. And so let me introduce the people that are here. To my right and your left are three of our board members. And so I'll start to the far right. That's Jordan Raper. And to his left, that's Bill Ritter. And then Ms. Beverly Kelly. And these are three of our 9 board members. Ultimately, the decision of which approach to take in populating the new elementary school will be their decision to make. They've been very good in showing up at the information sessions. We will compile all the information that's come in on surveys and questions. We'll be sharing that with them, and then ultimately they will be making the decision. And we'll talk more about timelines and that sort of thing as we get towards the end of this meeting. To my left, on the far left, is Dr. Matt Thompson. He will be leading our presentation tonight. He's our Chief of Staff. To his right is Joe Perno. He's Assistant Superintendent for System Operations. And one of the things that System Operation does is construction, new construction, additions, renovations, and that sort of thing. So he will be able to address some of the questions that we've gotten related to that. To his right is Jason Ayers. Jason is our Director of Transportation. And so we've gotten a number of questions relative to transportation. So when we get to the question part of the agenda, Jason will be able to answer some of those questions. And then to his right is Dr. Chris McMichael, and he's our school system superintendent. Dr. McMichael and our Board of Education members work well together and will be working hand in glove to make the best decision possible in terms of our new elementary school and how that will be populated with students and staff. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Matt Thompson for our presentation.
Can you say one real quick? You made a comment that it's ultimately our decisions. Really, our decisions will be based on what the parents and what's best for the students. So I want you to know that we don't have the dog in the hunt. It's you folks and your children. So that is really where the decision is going to lie. So I just want to make that really clear.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. And just to reiterate what one of the things Dr. Green said, there's been some talk that this decision has already been made. It has absolutely not. Part of the information gathering in terms of which of these two models that we're going to discuss tonight have been getting information from the community, having listening sessions, having questions answered, talking to principals, talking to parents, gathering survey data. We've already had one large survey. At the end of tonight, you're going to be surveyed again. Those of you who've attended, we really want to make sure that we've incorporated all the feedback from the community so we can make the best decision for Barrow County. So what I'm going to talk through today is a little bit about why school districts need to rezone or change their school structure anyway. What's the challenge that's causing that? Talk a little bit about the two models that have been proposed about what we might do with the new elementary school, and then to talk a little bit about what the impact of that would be based on where students who live in certain neighborhoods, certain areas may be zoned to go to school, and also how that would change the enrollment of the schools that are involved. So at the most basic level, the reason you have to make these changes is because your system grows. Barrow is blessed in many ways to be a growing district. Not every district in this state is growing, and Barrow County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Georgia. And that also, though, presents challenges. It's a blessing. We're happy we have it, but it makes our jobs a little harder, and we have to work very hard to stay ahead of that because we want to make sure that we're growing our school district's capacity in terms of physical buildings, teachers, resources at the same rate that our students are growing. So what you're looking at is the 6-year trend for our total system enrollment. And that's every level at every school in the district. And what you can see is, if you go back to 2018, which was the last time we did a rezone, that was on the Winder-Barrow High School zone, and that was where they went from 4 elementary schools to opening Winder Elementary School to reduce some of the population explosion that had really put pressure on schools in terms of housing all of the students. And what you can see in that time frame is we have gained over 1,000 students in 6 years. Now that averages out to about 1.5% to 2% growth per year. And you notice we had a little bit of a dip in 2020. That was during the pandemic, and that was pretty typical for every school district in Georgia. Almost everyone saw enrollment declines as a lot of parents chose to homeschool with their kids in alternative settings during that period. But since then, what you can see is a precipitous increase to the point to where we jumped up over 500 students in a single year, which is closer to 4% growth. And that's a considerably high level and much higher than our average growth had been for the last 10, 15 years. It's closer to what the growth was like for those of you who lived in Barrow County back in the mid-2000s, about 2006 to 2008. And you don't have to take my word for it. If you have ridden around Barrow County at any point in the past few months, you will have seen there are developments growing up all over the place, areas that used to be farms, woodland, that are now being developments. And those are going to bring people into the community. That's going to bring kids. And that's going to mean more students that we have to educate. Now, this is compounded by the fact that we, even prior to the growth that we know is coming, have been experiencing high levels of growth. So this is back in 2018, that last time we rezoned on the Winder side. This is where the elementary schools on the Appalachia cluster were. So you can see the smallest of the schools was Auburn, about 760. Bethlehem was very consistent. Kennedy, at that point, was the second largest, and Yargo was the largest. Here's what's happened in the 5 years after. Auburn has stayed about the same. Bethlehem has jumped up to 851. Kennedy is up to 928. And Yargo is at 898. That's a pretty considerable gain. Depending on the grade levels you're talking about, for Kennedy, that's a gain of 115 students. Depending on which grade level you're looking at, that is between 4 and 6 classrooms worth. And as a result, because I can tell you, and Mr. Butcher mentioned he'd been here 15 years, he knows this full well, it wasn't like we had a lot of room back in 2018. We were already bursting at the seams. So this has been growth that has meant that we've had to add a lot of modular units learning cottages, whatever term we use, and they're actually much nicer now than they ever were back when many of us were in school, but they're still not an optimal circumstance. You still have students not being in the building with their peers. We have 23 of those units at Kennedy currently. So that's just not a sustainable level of growth. And given what we know is coming, we have to make a decision to add another elementary school. But we have had good planning. Ms. Cindy Beggs, who does our planning, is not here tonight, but she does an excellent job of that. Mr. Perno and his team stays well ahead of that because we have to accommodate that growth. And as he'll discuss, it can take up to 3 years to build a new school from planning all the way to implementation. So what you're looking at currently, these are the current attendance zones for the Appalachia cluster. So that gray you see, that really large zone, is the Kennedy attendance zone. And you can see Fort Yargo roughly in the middle. You can see where Kennedy sits right in the middle. And that extends a good ways east and west and also north and south. It's a big attendance zone. You'll see Yargo is the smallest, and the reason that had happened was Yargo had always been one of the denser areas with a lot of housing. What's happened is as growth has hit Kennedy, that has increased considerably. So if we were to do a traditional rezone, which we'll talk about in just a second, we would have to redraw those lines, which means many people that are currently in the Kennedy zone would have to be rezoned to go either to the new elementary school, to an already existing elementary school, because that's the only way you can actually accomplish balancing the enrollment. You'll notice, however, the new school, which is on the Austin Road campus where BASA is located, that's where the new elementary is pretty far to the east of the county. Now, you may ask, why did we not build more central? Well, the answer is we get land where we can get land. We're competing with developers. We're competing with everybody else for land in Barrow County. We often can't match the prices that they can pay because we're trying to be good stewards of public money. And so when we get land that's available to build a school, we take it. And in this case, the Austin Road campus gave us an excellent location to build an elementary. It's not optimally situated where we would love to have it, which means we have to make some hard decisions. So in the process of talking through all that and making hard decisions, because in Barrow we believe in being bold and innovative, another option was raised that came up, and this was an option that was discussed, and then it was brought to the school governance teams at each of the elementary schools and got fairly positive feedback. And what that would be a 4th and 5th grade academy. So how that would look is instead of being a traditional K-5 school, the new elementary school would be a 4th and 5th grade academy that would house all of the students originally from the Appalachia cluster in one building, which would take the pressure off the schools that already existed, but it would also enable, as Dr. McMichael will discuss in just a second, it would enable us to do some potentially pretty creative and cool things to help students and teachers in that model, and there's a lot to speak for that kind of a model. So we wanted to take a look at it. As it turned out, we could not make that work with where Auburn is located. It's just too far geographically from the new school. We'd have had students on the bus for well over an hour in some cases to get there. So under this proposed model, Auburn would actually have their own 4th and 5th grade academy that would sit at their school. But in this case, all of the 4th and 5th grade students, rising 4th and 5th graders obviously, so 3rd and 4th currently, from Kennedy, Yargo, and Bethlehem would instead go to the new school and be in the 4th and 5th grade academy model. So I'm going to talk about that at length, but I'm going to let Dr. McMichael come up and talk a little bit about why we think this is a model worth exploring.
So much, Matt. Good evening, everyone. I want to first of all say the 4th and 5th grade, the actual idea for it actually came out of the schools. It wasn't some of us sitting around saying, "Oh, what else can we do different to make things more complicated?" It came from some of the school folks, and we wanted to be open to that and listen and think it through and do all those things, because we do pride ourselves in Barrow County. If there's a better way to do things, it may not be the standard way to do it, but we're going to give it a shot if we can. What being Barrow bold is all about, and not just doing things the way they've always been done because that's the way they've always been done. So that's really where this came from. The more we looked at it, the 4th and 5th, there are pros and cons for both models. Some of the pros for the 4th and 5th grade piece is if you've been in the classrooms, teachers probably back me up on some of this. What goes on in pre-K, kindergarten, and what goes on in 4th and 5th are pretty different these days as far as curriculum goes, the pedagogy, and the other needs, the social needs. Fourth graders, and also even just the classes get larger. What the things we used to see, I've been doing this pretty good number of years now, that we used to see in 6th grade, 7th grade, some of those issues start in 4th grade now, and we start seeing some of those. So some of the counseling pieces are different. Some of the just different focus on how to get there. And the other side of that is at the younger grades, we need more focus on the basic skills and these type of things. So administration, instructional coaches, those type of folks, counselors, that's the word I was looking for, giving them a chance to be more focused on the needs of those two kind of distinct groups instead of the whole K through 5 or pre-K through 5 in our cases could be of advantage. Now there are disadvantages too. There's another transition that's put in. So you're going from, we have the transitions now from 8th grade to 9th grade and from 5th grade to 6th grade, and those are those take some getting used to when kids make those transitions. So that would be another transition. There's there will definitely be some issues with parents having, one more kind of level to navigate instead of 3 levels, it would be 4. So there are definitely some issues that we've thought, tried to think through that are cons, and really not here to put finger on the scale either way, just to give you all the facts and then get your feedback on those. But we didn't want to just dismiss it out of hand, because it really does have some good learning pieces for our students, and if we feel like it's better for our students, we need to try to do it. I think we can all hopefully agree on that, because that is why we're here. It's all about students. But we do also have to take in the stress on teachers and parents and everyone else, the community also. But we always try to do what's best for the community. So that being said, again, the easiest thing to do would have been just say, it's traditional, just go ahead and go that route. And if the decision had already been made, as Dr. Thompson alluded to earlier, then we'd already be a little further down the road. But we really wanted to take our time and explore all our options. We feel like we owe that to the taxpayers of the county. We owe it to our board, and most of all, we owe it to our kids. And so that's really where we are with that. We'll go over kind of some more of the pluses and minuses for both here, the rest of Matt's piece, but just wanted to kind of explain where that came from. Other districts do it. It's not something we've just brand new with us. As a matter of fact, I was a principal years ago, and it's a little bit smaller district, but I was the principal of the elementary school. I had 3, 4, and 5. Another principal had pre-K through 2, and we worked together really well. Our folks worked together very well as far as coordinating those type of things. I did wind up with most of the testing, but other than that, it was a good thing. And that, some of the folks around here, Buford, Jefferson, a lot of other districts do that type of thing, Gainesville. So it's not something that's brand new and unproven. It's out there, and there's research both ways. The dirty secret with educational research is you can usually find something to back up whichever way you want to go. So it really comes down to your community when it comes down to schooling. And so that's really why we're here tonight. So, Matt?
Thank you, Dr. Michael. So the good thing about both these models, having a 4th and 5th grade academy and having a traditional rezone, is both of them would do the job we need to take the enrollment pressure off of our elementary schools. And I'll show you some numbers on that in just a second. Which means the decision has to come down to what's right for Barrow County kids on this side of the county. What's the best model for them, what's best for parents, what's best for everybody else. So both of these will solve that problem. So to show you the first example, so let's imagine that as of today, we had a 4th and 5th grade academy. Now, again, as I mentioned, I want to be clear, Auburn would not be part of this new school academy. They would have their own on-site at Auburn. So let's say we had that today. Well, what you can see on the far left is the numbers I just gave you a minute ago. Kennedy has 928 students today, Yargo with 898, Bethlehem 851, Auburn 770. So because we have those students today, I can tell you exactly what would happen if we had a 4th and 5th grade academy. And that is, Auburn would stay the same, because, again, their students are on there. Bethlehem would drop from 851 to 573 students. Kennedy would drop to 619 students, which is a decline of over 300 students, which are in 4th and 5th currently. Yargo would drop from 898 to 603. And the new school would actually be a little bit larger. It would be 882, but remember, as it's a new school, it's been built to accommodate more students than our traditional schools had. So they're in a better position to actually do that. Now, that would be how that works. Now, obviously, again, what's going to start happening as soon as we do this, we're going to get more growth. But we're going to be better able to accommodate it. Even if it's at that 4 or 5% level of growth, we can go along with that until 5-6 years pass, and everybody up here is doing something else, but somebody would be building the 6th elementary school on this side of the county. So that's how that would look under a 4th, 5th academy model. Now, in a traditional rezone, it's harder to calculate. The reason is because you don't just redraw lines to get numbers. We can do that, and I'm going to show you an example of what that would look like. But we know there's a lot of factors that goes into that. You want to make sure the school has the right balance of neighborhoods, distance between, for transportation purposes, socioeconomic factors. You don't want to create one school that's a poorer school and one school that's a richer school. You want to make sure that you're balanced and equitable. So there is a process with a rezone. We've done it before. It takes several months. We have a committee of parents, teachers, administrators that get together, and they work for several months redrawing the maps, trying to figure out what's the best possible combination to make sure to balance the enrollment while at the same time being fair to parents. So I can't give you absolute numbers. What I can show you, though, is if we just did a very simple model that was how can we get those 5 elementary schools to have as close an enrollment as we could possibly get. And they won't be entirely equal because neighborhoods are big or small, so sometimes you slice it up different ways and you can't get them perfect. But we did an example, and folks, what I'm going to show you next has a big word called draft in red letters. So I know it's going to be tempting to pull out your phone and take a picture of it. You don't have to because it's pretty straightforward. But I want to tell you, this is a draft. This is an example of what a rezone could look like. It does not mean that if we rezone, this is what it would look like. That's a process a committee has to go through. So remember, go back to our original draft. So remember, Kennedy was the large gray, and if you recall on this, Fort Yargo was sitting kind of smack in the middle. Well, you'll notice in this they're not. So let's zoom in on this a little. In order to balance it, what would probably end up have to happen is you'll notice there's a difference now between the gray and the blue. That dividing line is Highway 81. In a simple balancing model, probably what would happen is everything west of Highway 81 would stay at Kennedy. Everything east would end up either in Bethlehem or the new elementary. And it could actually have some parts of that would go to Bethlehem. Some might go to the new elementary. They all may go to one. It just depends. But in a very simple model, that would be what the kind of cut we'd have to make geographically to balance it. Now, again, I want to clarify, there's a big old draft on that. Don't walk away from this saying, if we do a rezone, I live east of 81, I'm going to Bethlehem. No, it's just that's the kind of thing that would happen in a rezone. But we can't show you exactly because there's a committee that has to do that work, and they have not been formulated, and they will not be formulated until the board has made the decision that that's the direction we want to go in. But once that happens, that would be the next phase. So that's the models. And we've talked a little bit about some of the pluses and minuses. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Green. And Dr. Green's going to take you through some of the questions we've already answered, and then you're going to have an opportunity to ask your own questions so we can start helping you understand what might be the best choice in your view, and you can communicate that to your Board of Education representative.
Thank you, Matt. They've already been asking questions, so that's good. So we'll get to those. I want to show you our website. I want to show you how to get to the page on our website where we have information posted about the new elementary school, and from there I want to show you how to get to our frequently asked questions. There's quite a number of questions that came in on the initial survey that we submitted back, I think, a week or 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks before the fall break. You should have gotten that survey and had an opportunity to contribute to that. And then we've continued to receive questions since that point, and so we want to continuously update those frequently asked questions, and you can go back there and look at the questions and the answers. So I'm first going to take you to our main Barrow County School System webpage. The address is, you can do a Google search for Barrow County Schools, or you can type in www.barrow.k12.ga.us. That brings you to a page like this. You'll notice across, just underneath the menus at the top, you'll see a group of pictures. These are our news stories, and these actually scroll a little bit. So the one we're looking for is currently in the top left position, says New Elementary School Information. And if it happens to not be visible, and that will take you to this page, which is a page about our new school information sessions. Talks about these sessions that we're having. It gives you a little write-up about each of the two models that are being considered, and you can kind of scroll down and see that information that is summarized for you there with the two different models that are available, the dates for these meetings, the last of which is tonight. And then you can click on the review FAQ, and that will take you to our frequently asked questions page, which I will do now. And this is our frequently asked questions page. We've tried to sort of sort the questions by broad topic areas. So you'll notice there's questions there about the traditional rezone. There's questions there about the academy possibility. There's questions specific to Auburn Elementary School, primarily because if we were to adopt the 4th and 5th grade academy, the proposal is that their 4th and 5th would remain on their campus, so there's just separate questions for how that would work and the differences. There's questions related to teachers and staff. How will teachers be selected in each of these models? That sort of thing. And then we have questions related to future plans for new schools. So if you just keep scrolling, you'll see that these are the questions. These are the kinds of questions that we have had. Some of these questions have been asked by multiple people and that sort of thing, but as we scroll down, that's what we'll see. I'm going to click on one. When you click on the plus, it will turn to a minus and the answer will be there. So while we're here, we'll just ask and answer this question because I know that people are curious about that. If the 4th and 5th grade academy is the option that's adopted, will the bell times be the same as other elementary schools? Will they all be on the same bell schedule? We would not anticipate that the 4th and 5th grade academy would be on the same bell schedule as the other elementary schools because we want to create the opportunity for parents who want their children to be car riders, for them to be able to drop off at one school and have time to get to the other school, and in the afternoon do the opposite. So we would anticipate that the 4th and 5th grade academy time bell schedule would be offset from the elementary schedules to allow for that. Now we're going to offer home to school transportation for students to either of all of our schools as we currently do. But the offset would allow folks that choose to have their children be car riders to be able to, if they have children at both levels, to be able to get there and transport between the two. Idea of our frequently asked questions. We want to continuously update that, which is the reason that we're asking you to submit your questions digitally so we can capture those, so we can provide answers. I am looking at some of the questions that have come in already tonight. One question is, when will a decision be made? I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about that at the very end of the meeting, so I'll get to that question. Another question that has been asked tonight is the 7th and 8th grade academy idea off the table? So I want to speak to that a little bit. As Dr. McMichael said, the idea of a possible 4th and 5th grade academy came from our community. It was an idea that was thought up and passed on to us at one of our SGT meetings. The idea of a possible 7th and 8th grade academy also came up. We have had discussions about a 7th and 8th grade academy and using the new school as a 7th and 8th grade academy. We discussed that quite a bit and just felt like that this is not a feasible option at this time, and that's the reason that it wasn't on the survey because it just involves even more complicating factors than we have with the two models that are here already. The school was specifically built to be an elementary school, was specifically built to relieve overcrowding at the elementary schools in this cluster. So there's just a number of reasons that was an idea that we discussed, but it was not an idea that we've moved forward with. We don't feel like it's as flexible as good as we as the two options we're considering at this point. So I'm going to begin. I'm going to pass some questions on to our distinguished panel over here. And so I'm first going to start with transportation. We've had a number of transportation questions that have been asked. How will we handle transportation for a 4th and 5th grade academy? How long will the bus rides be? How will we have the resources to be able to provide that? So I'm going to ask Jason Ayers to come to the microphone and just kind of go through some of the questions that have been asked related to transportation.
Good evening. Biggest thing we got to do is we've got to get them there. We can have new schools, but if we don't get them there, nobody's going to have anything to do. So we want to make sure teachers and staff have the children there they need. A couple of concerns that are really practical. You know, transportation is no secret. We do have staffing issues at time to time, so people are worried about us being overburdened. And why are you guys making decisions to add burdens to transportation stuff? Well, no matter what transportation's doing, the school's got to open up. So we've been really looking at this for a long time on what models we can what strategies we can implement. We've done pretty good. I'll be in my 3rd year anniversary, first day of next month. So we've done a lot besides the pandemic as far as the department getting our strategies together, working with the board and with district leadership and getting input from everybody. And we do hear the criticisms and the concerns. But we've done pretty good to get caught up and kind of get to the point we're slowly getting ahead of the growth. That's the biggest thing. We don't want it dragging us, you know, and stuff. And I know if you live in an area where we have some staffing issues, or where we're doubling up routes, it doesn't feel that way. But trust me, we're working to get there, and we're gaining ground every week with it. One thing we can do, we can adjust bell schedules. I'll give you one example of that. BASA, we have 22 BASA routes. What we did this year was we moved the BASA schedule to line up with the other high schools. Well, what that done, that provided those buses to be available for the other tier, for the elementary level. So we're able to facilitate those and fold those buses in when we need subs and, you know, extra buses and things of that nature. What we plan to do currently, right now, with this, no matter which model we do, we would, if it was a 4th and 5th grade model, we can dedicate those buses to 4th and 5th grade students. So that's kind of an easy thing. That's 12 buses we have on tap for that. Now, if we obviously if we rezone, somebody's like, well, you know, do you have to add buses for that or anything like that? You got to understand something. It's currently the children we have now. I mean, I know we're in a growth scenario and stuff like that, but we're still dealing with the same numbers roughly. So all we do is we rework our loads, get our numbers kind of switched around, and dedicate some buses, you know, pull buses out of the areas that they are based on a rezone or anything like that, and use those buses. So it's kind of just using the same buses we have in a different way to facilitate whichever model, you know, is decided upon. Another thing we're doing, and these will be coming in the next few months, when you see a bus, you probably don't consider how many students can fit on there. Well, we do because we live with it every day. One thing you have here a lot of is 72 passenger buses. That's the largest bus we have. What we've done is started ordering 84 passenger buses. That's 12 more seats. So we're trying to get more seats behind the same number of staff that we have. So that's another strategy as well. So it's a bunch of little things, a bunch of little tweaks we do here and there. And again, bell schedules and different models help us with that, to be able to move buses around and kind of use the same buses. That optimizes our routes pretty good. We will have to add buses at some point, but you know, you can add 20 positions. That don't mean you can fill them, you know, so we have to kind of optimize and kind of keep moving, you know, pushing, you know, moving the needle every way we can to keep staffed up. But that, if we relied on just getting staffed, we'd be struggling really bad if that was the only strategy that we had. But that just kind of gives you a quick overview of kind of how we're approaching the situation. So.
Thank you, Jason. I realized after I introduced everybody else that I didn't tell you who I am. I'm Ken Green. I'm Assistant Superintendent for Support Services. My role here tonight is largely to facilitate the meeting and be a little bit of an MC and keep things moving, but I wanted you to know who was talking to you tonight. I'm going to bring up Joe Perno at this time. We've had a lot of questions relative to sort of some funding and some planning related to how facilities, you know, the timing of facilities being built and those sorts of things. I'm going to bring him up for that. Also, Joe, one of the questions that's come in tonight that you can answer while you're up here is, was there an initial plan for how that new facility was going to be used when we started construction?
Good evening. So, yes, our initial design was for a K-5 school. That's what we intended to build years ago, and so we've stayed with that. And it can accommodate, obviously, just a 4 and 5 grades school as well. But that's been our traditional model as K-5 school. And we start that process years ago. It takes 3 years from the time you design a school until you open the doors for the kids. So we were doing that sort of work quite a while ago. But some of the things that we're doing to prepare for the growth and to respond to the growth that we're seeing, we're developing that innovation campus. And so not only the elementary school that we're talking about tonight, which will open this next school year, but we've just started in addition to the Barrow Arts and Sciences Academy High School on that site. And we're also in the midst of doing all this earthwork out there. We're grading for a new middle school, a future middle school. So at some point we'll have an elementary, middle, and high school all out there on that same campus. And so that's part of the planning that we're doing. Also, mobile units and pods. Those are part of the mix as well. And, obviously we'd like to be in the school building, but, when we're growing, that comes with it. And the way we get money from the state to build our schools, to go with our local tax dollars, is we have to show need. And the state doesn't allow us to look out, years ahead and say, well, we think we're going to grow at 3% or 5% or 10%. They don't look at projections. They look at actual growth. And so we are growing quite a bit, but they take the past 5 years, they take the average of that. And Dr. McMichael made a good point last night to say, our numbers dipped a little bit there with COVID, so it created a little bit of a slower growth pattern. So we've got to accumulate mobiles to show that need to the state, and then we can draw down that money to put that with our local dollars to build schools. So our board has purchased additional land for the system. We also have a couple of parcels that we've had in our inventory for a while, and we're going to start looking at those properties. And we'd like to even maybe get ahead and start doing the grading work for those. So again, we've got the land prepared. When we get that money from the state accumulated, we can grab it, put it with our local dollars, and get going. But you're almost always going to see mobile units, unfortunately, sitting out by a school before you can get those dollars to build a new one. So that's kind of a picture of the facilities and what we're doing to try to prepare for the growth.
One more question, Joe. So how many kids can the new school hold?
Well, our elementary schools are built for 900 student capacity, middle schools at 1,200, and high schools at 1,800. And some of our older buildings, Kennedy included, they have that same capacity because there's an addition to this building. But we are building our buildings bigger, as Dr. Thompson said. And most of the time, that's going to be a little bit bigger cafeteria, gym space, media center, some of those core areas. We're making those a little bit bigger than we used to, hallways and so forth. So the capacity is the same, the number of classrooms is the same, but the buildings are a little bit bigger, just to accommodate mainly some of those core spaces.
I think that's it for now. I'm going to answer a couple of other questions that have come in, and I'm going to just ask my partners to my left if I don't give the right answer, that they'll come up and knock me on the head, and they'll give you the right answer. But we've had others come in. But there's a couple of things I want to say first. Number one is any change is just generally hard. It's hard, even when good change. We get married, that's a wonderful, good change, but the transition can often be very difficult. And so having to change the school that we attend or the way those are configured, those can all be hard, and neither of these decisions is perfect. And they both present challenges, and they both present change for a number of people, students, and families, and staff. And so we understand that that's a very difficult thing, and that's one of the reasons we're taking as much time as we're taking to try to make sure that we've considered things from as many different ways as we can so that we can make the best decisions that are possible. But we understand that there is no decision that's going to be completely preferred by everybody, and there's not a perfect solution. And another thing I want to mention is that a lot of the questions we've been answering, a lot of stuff we're getting is related to a 4th and 5th grade academy. That is, in no way indicates a bias for that, but that's the new thing. A traditional rezone, we've gone through rezonings before. The one thing different about this one is just the amount of students that would be affected, and not all of those students would be generally zoned into the new school. Some of those that would need to be rezoned to balance enrollment would actually be zoned into existing schools. And so that's sometimes even less preferred when you're leaving your school and then going to a school that's not the new shiny thing. And so that's a complicating factor for traditional rezone, but we have done rezones before. Probably most of us have been affected by a rezone at one time or another. A lot of the questions and a lot of our discussion is about 4th and 5th grade academy, largely because that's what's new. We haven't done a 4th and 5th grade academy before, and so we wonder about that. One last just generic comment that I'll make is that there's still a lot of unknowns about either model. There'll be details that will get worked out once the model is determined. We know generally kind of how we anticipate things to go, but as Dr. Thompson said when he showed the maps, the zoning maps before, those are just to give you sort of a sense of what would happen, or the scope of the work. There'd be a committee that would be assigned to actually work out all the details, and so the same would be true with a 4th and 5th grade academy. We have a sense of kind of what that would look like and how things would go, but the details would get worked out when we get to that stage. A couple of questions, and I'm going to call Dr. McMichael up here to talk a little bit more about some 4th and 5th grade academy information, but 2 questions that I think I can answer, and he'll tell me if I'm wrong. What will happen if a 5th grader has a younger sibling? Will they have to go to separate schools? It all depends on which of the 2 models is adopted. If it's a 4th and 5th grade academy and their sibling is a 4th grader, they would go to the same school. If it's a 4th and 5th grade academy and their sibling is a 2nd grader, they would go to different schools. If we rezone, then because they're living in the same household, they would go to the same school. So it just depends on the specific model that is chosen, the grade levels of the siblings, and that sort of thing. The second question is, if there is a 4th and 5th grade academy, will classes continue to be organized by their original elementary school, or will classes be mixed from students from all areas? Generally, that's a decision made by the principal and the leadership team at a school. And so I would anticipate, unless Dr. McMichael hits me in the head and tells me that's not going to be the case, that would be a decision left to the principal at the 4th and 5th grade academy, and the leadership team assembled there, that they would make decisions in the best interest of the students that are there. So that would be an example of sort of some details that will get worked out in the future. Once we get past the decision of which model, then we'll start working on some decisions related to that. He can address that further if I'm wrong. A couple of questions that have come up related to a possible 4th and 5th grade academy that I specifically want you to be able to answer, and you can answer anything else related to that, is how will staff be selected for the 4th and 5th grade academy? And even though the question's not here, while you're talking about staff selected if a 4th and 5th grade academy is chosen, maybe you should go ahead and talk about what happens, how staff will be selected in a traditional rezone. But the other question is, if a 4th and 5th grade academy is selected, is the intent to become an extension of Barrow County's AIM program?
Great, good questions. First of all, with Dr. Green was right on with the way that those determinations will be made, and just to add to that, as far as the makeup, how the schools run, we are a site-based, school governance team-based. It's pretty much the way we hire principals and support them as they run their schools. So, and also being a charter system, the school governance team has a lot of input in those things also. So that said, we're planning on probably posting in December maybe early January at the latest for the principal, and get that person hired in, and so everyone knows who that is in the January by February timeframe. Either way, which the decision goes, so that that person can start making contacts with the new community, the new staff, setting up the leadership teams, and getting all those things going. That's a model we used very well over when we opened Winder Elementary and when we opened Vasa. So we definitely going to be doing that. And so that person will be in, and then can come out to the school, start to get to know kids, start to get to know teachers, those type of things. So that goes with that. As far as the staff selection for a traditional, I have this big cowboy hat. No, I'm kidding. But those who've been around a while might get that. But no, it would be. It's not just a. It's like when we do everything else. It's got to be a balance. We can't just hire all new teachers and staff and put into a new school. We need veteran teachers in there. We need, first we go with volunteers. That's one thing we always do. And then we look and see where we are, and we try to balance it from there. Of course, we need special ed teachers, and we need, other specialized areas too, ESOL and these type of things. So we've got to make sure we have those in. They can't all be brand new teachers. That's not fair to the kids. Don't want just all folks that are, going to retire in a couple of years either. So it's got to be a good blend of that. So we will strive to make it as balanced as all our other schools are. And so we'll have some first-year teachers, we'll have some 28-year veterans, and everything in between as far as that goes. And to do that, primarily, once we look at the volunteers, then we start looking within the schools, of course, that are losing kids, because they'll need to lose teachers also. And that's the other unfun part of this. I mean, either way, it's, people are leaving a school and a culture they become a part of to go and be a part of a new culture, or with a new school, start a new culture. And that's exciting in a lot of ways, but it's also scary. And most educators and teachers like to get in there and stay where they are and get to know the kids and the families. And that's a real downside of growth and having to do these things, is we do have to kind of upset some apple carts. But that would be the way we would do that. Now, and so being able to tell you exactly how many would come from Kennedy, how many exactly would come from Bethlehem, Yargo, perhaps Auburn, really can't tell you at this point. But there will definitely be a mixture of those schools, and probably some volunteers from across in the Winder Barrel cluster too. The 4th and 5th grade academy, one benefit of that, I guess, is one way to look at it, is we pretty much know it'll be the 4th and 5th grade teachers. Whoever is slated to be in 4th and 5th grade next school year, go with their kids. The good thing is they go with their kids, and their kids have that face they know, especially the ones going into the 5th grade, know the 4th grade teachers and know the teachers already they already have, and those kids are going with their friends too, so it's their peer group. So that's another positive there. That can be a negative too, because if the teachers right now, and I've been a teacher and I've been married to a teacher, and I know how it works. Change is always a scary thing, no matter what you're doing. So on one hand, it's good to know early and go ahead and make your plans, but on the other hand, you got a chance where maybe I won't have to leave too. So it's again depends on kind of your attitude, whether it's a plus or a minus as far as either one of those goes. Regarding the AIM program, no, it won't. We're hoping we plan for the new middle school once it's opened out there to actually be that model. In a perfect world, we would kind of have that as a choice elementary school like we have with Vasa, but we just can't rely on that. We're just too overcrowded. I mean, 23. We couldn't count on 23 portables worth of students opting to go to a new school, and so we just can't do it that way with this one. That said, being a new school, new culture, either way, if that principal and that leadership team and that the parents of that school want to go to something that has more of a theme to it, an arts and sciences theme, something like that, we're definitely open to allowing that to happen. And helping with the planning of that. I think that would actually be a great thing to see. But it's not something we want to force at this point. But I do think as we grow, it's incumbent upon us to keep looking for better ways to serve our kids and our teachers and our families. And we've seen it, proof of concept with AIM and with BASA that there is a want out there for something a little different sometimes. For not for everyone, but for a pretty good number of folks. And people, we have people wanting to pay tuition to come to Barrow County now for those type of things. So it's really been interesting to see that. And our other schools, traditional schools at this point, have started picking up a lot of that also, and that's great. That's really what we want to see is all our schools expanding and picking up new ways of doing things, problem-based learning, hands-on, really relevant to what's going on for the kids in their futures and this type of thing. And I think the more we are open to listening and conversing and having these face-to-face and transparent conversations, the better we can do for our kids. I mean, it can only get better if we keep doing that. So that's really where we are with those.
Okay. Thank you, Al. We're getting ready to wrap up. A couple of other things that I want to mention. We didn't talk a lot about a 4th and 5th grade academy at Auburn tonight because we weren't at Auburn, but I know that there's been a question come in relative to Auburn. So I'm going to mention just some things about Auburn. We would anticipate trying to replicate the 4th and 5th grade academy model at Auburn on their campus through the addition of what we call a pod. A pod is a temporary building, but a lot more like a permanent building than what we have with our modular units now. Now our modular learning units are, each classroom is a separate building, maybe 2 classrooms in a building. A pod would have 12 classrooms in a single building, hall down the middle. It would be like, especially once you're inside, but even a little from the outside, it just looks like an addition at the school, so that we would be able to sort of replicate much of what would happen with the 4th and 5th grade academy at the new elementary school with 4th and 5th grade students and teachers at Auburn, but on their campus in a pod. Would everything be exactly the same? No. But we would do as much as we could to try to continue to have consistency across those. I think we mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. A large reason that Auburn is not part of the current proposal to go to the new elementary school is just largely because of their location in the county. It's not even easy to get to 316 from Auburn, and so transportation becomes just much more of an issue, even with car riders, to get from school to school. So that gives you a little bit of information there on Auburn. I believe I heard Dr. McMichael mention an answer to this next question in passing in his previous comments, so I'm going to read the question and give a little bit of an answer. If there will eventually be a middle and high school built in the area of the new school, will they have to rezone then? Okay, so we already have a high school at that campus. The addition will be just expanding that existing high school. And so it won't be a completely new school. It will be an addition and an enlargement of BASA, Barrow Arts and Sciences Academy, Phase 2. A new elementary school, as I heard Dr. McMichael say tonight, and I've heard him say before, our initial thinking would be that would be the extension of the AIM program. So we would move AIM to the new, did I say something else? The new middle school. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to eventually mess that up. At the time that a new middle school gets built at that location, that would be when we would move AIM to that building and would anticipate expanding the AIM program. So that likely would be a choice program, much like what AIM is now, much like same as what BASA is now. But I want to put an asterisk beside that answer because no date has been set for when that will be built, and obviously if things change in the county, then things may need to change in terms of how that facility gets used. But right now, that would be the vision of kind of how we would anticipate that happening when that middle school is built. We're grading the property to prepare for that, but there's not a date set for when we will start constructing a new middle school, correct? So we may build other schools in other places before we get to that spot. It largely depends on the growth, where it's coming from, ages of students that are coming in with that growth, and that sort of thing. So I said I would answer the timing of this. I want to tell you how you can continue to submit questions. On our frequently asked questions page, which I've gotten away from now, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, then there is a big box there for you to put questions and continue to ask questions and comments and those sorts of things, and you can submit from there. So if you leave here tonight and you ponder this over the next day or so and you think of something you wished you had asked, then submit it that way, and we will put that on the frequently asked questions and answers to those types of things that come in. So this is not your last opportunity to ask questions. Before we leave, the very last thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to flip the PowerPoint one more slide, and there's another QR code there, and there is another survey. It's a 2-question survey. Won't take you long at all to answer that. So you that are attending here, the folks that are watching us live, will have up to 2 hours to kind of give us feedback on those 2 questions. And so I really hope that all of you will take advantage of that and give us that additional feedback. They basically are asking you, after having heard all the information that we presented tonight, if you happen to have been on the website and read that, after having all that information, what's your preference? So we will, and I caution by saying these are not votes. These are gathering information. And that information will be shared with our board members. And as Mr. Ritter said, all that will be taken into account when they make a decision. So we'll get to that. The timing. We would anticipate that after tonight, this is the last of our information sessions, so we will immediately begin putting together a presentation, a formal presentation for our Board of Education. We anticipate that we'll share that in a meeting in the next 4 to 6 weeks with them, and then they will take the information, and the information will come from the surveys that have been administered. They'll come from the questions that have been asked and answered. They'll come from data that about enrollment and projections and those kinds of things. And we anticipate that they will make a decision no later than early December and possibly sooner than that between the 2 models. So we anticipate that in the next 6 weeks or so, the Board of Education will give us guidance on which of these models they want us to pursue. Based on that decision, if it's a traditional rezone, we will immediately form a committee that will have representatives from families, from staff, from all of the schools affected. And in a traditional rezone, that would include middle school, the 2 middle schools on the Appalachia cluster, forming a committee, and we'll begin work to determine the best way to draw the school attendance zones. We would hope to finish that work by early March at the latest, and preferably earlier than that. But that's a lot of work, and so we'll work really hard to do that. If that is the decision, there will be other opportunities for community input. So there would be a proposal of what the school attendance zones would be. There'd be opportunity for families and teachers to give us input on that, community meetings, and then we would try to get that done on that time frame. If it's a 4th and 5th grade academy, then it's a little bit easier to move more quickly with that because we're not rezoning and that sort of thing. So as soon as we get that information, we'll get started in working out all the details of the 4th and 5th grade academy. So we've got a pretty extensive workload in the next few months, and winter will keep us busy, but those will be the next step. If you want to follow our progress, you can go to the Barrow County Schools website, look at the new elementary school information, and just track what we're doing there, particularly questions and answers and that sort of thing. So we will go on now. Thank you for coming. If you will scan this QR code or type in that URL address in a web browser and take the survey before you leave, we really want to hear from you. This will be up for a couple of hours after the meeting. And thank you for being here, and we are adjourned.